3, 2, 1. Frankie Go Boom. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. Hope you're having a good day today. It's always a good day for me when I get to talk to independent filmmakers because that's one of my favorite things to do. I love to get inside the process. I want to know everything about the craft. And I also want to know about how some of these movies get funded. How do they get funded? How do you find that elusive money to make your film? We're going to get into that today with filmmaker Jordan Roberts. Before we do that, I want to tell you about an event that you can be a part of. Award This. It's award season. We're talking about the Oscars, the Spirit Awards, or maybe you're not talking about them, but you're probably going to watch the Oscars and have an Oscar party. I love award season, but the thing that I find a little disconcerting is the fact that the movies that I really love, small independent films, they don't get the recognition that they deserve, which is why I created an event called Award This. And Award This is, it's an event that recognizes truly independent films of all genre types: indie sci-fi, comedy, horror, pop culture documentaries, sports documentaries. So documentaries even within different genres of documentaries. I created this event, and along with the editors of Film Threat, we get together, we talk about what are the best movies we've seen this year, and we want to give them recognition around award season. Now, I know you can't get a ticket to the Oscars or the Spirit Awards, but you can get a ticket to see Award This if you go to awardthis.com. How about just a quick little commercial break to tell you more about the event?
In a world where every award show is a fucking Zoom call, comes Award This. From your pals at Film Threat comes a celebration of true independent films. Join us on April 10th at a socially distanced drive-in. In fact, I'll be there as your announcer, wearing a hazmat suit and inside a giant Bacta tank. And prepare for a virtual award show unlike any other ever in the history of mankind, or awards kind. Award This 2021. It's happening, whether you like it or not. Drive-in live event on Saturday, April 10th. Virtual award show on Sunday, April 18th. Get tickets now at awardthis.com.
Okay, let's get right now to our guest today. Jordan Roberts is here, the filmmaker behind 3, 2, 1, Frankie Go Boom. Good to see you today, Jordan. Thanks for coming on the Film Threat Podcast.
Happy to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Now, let's talk about the title of this movie. And I want to talk about, you promised that you would tell me about the financing of this movie. And the title, if you look up IMDb, it says 3, 2, 1, Frankie Go Boom. But it's also known as Frankie Go Boom. This movie is on Netflix. And you told me that before we started recording, that the movie is the only film on Netflix you can find under 2 titles.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
How did that happen?
We made the movie as Frankie Go Boom, and it's independently financed and independently by me, which I think we'll get into in a bit. But once it came time to sell it, we made the decision because we had 6 or 7 different offers that were all-inclusive offers. In other words, they wanted everything, and it didn't seem like a fair deal to any of us, or it didn't seem like a fair deal to me. So we ended up breaking up the rights. And when it came time to look at the streaming sale, we realized that things were alphabetical with numbers first. And we made a shameless, ridiculous, slightly embarrassing, but it ultimately turned out to be a profitable, if not artistic, decision to add numbers to the beginning of our film. And it worked. The film streamed far more than it might have otherwise. It certainly, there's no way of really knowing that, but we think it did.
Well, I've heard of other filmmakers doing that.
Probably do it again.
Where they take their movie and they'll add a at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a simple plan instead of just simple plan or whatever.
But Frankie Go Boom.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess you only need to be concerned about movies that start with the number 1 or 2. But
yes.
I mean, that is a strategy for small independents. What I'm in a little dismayed about is, why did I not know about this movie? This is a really fun indie comedy that it's not just about relationships. It's also about the crazy movie business, as crazy as the stories are in your film, I feel like there are crazier stories that I've actually heard in the industry. But the cast of this thing, Charlie Hunnum, Chris O'Dowd, Lizzy Caplan. I am such a fan of Lizzy Caplan. I will admit something of a crush on her. She's been in a lot of small films, and I love Lizzy Caplan. But first of all, tell me, like, how did this project come together? I mean, you truly are the filmmaker in the sense that you wrote it, directed it, and also financed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I'm 7 years out of the original release of this movie, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to be totally forthright in a way I might not otherwise have been. My first film was released probably in 2003 or 4. It was a perfectly fine film. It's done well over the ages, but it was eviscerated in the press, and it was kind of devastating to me. And I was a successful screenwriter. I worked a lot. I've written many screenplays. That didn't go away after my film came out, and it was kind of criticized in the press. But directing offers sure did. And I was a bit in what's called director's jail as a result of this film. Again, over time, it's become quite a popular film. It's called Around the Bend, but the critics hated it. And so it took away my opportunity to direct again. So I decided I was going to take some of my filthy screenwriting lucre. At that time, I was doing production polishes that were quite lucrative, and I just kept sucking money away so that I could make a movie. And I did. I made my own movie, and it ended up being very much about the first experience, though I didn't know that as I wrote it. And if there's any writers listening, you know, sometimes you write something and you don't really know where it's coming from. This movie is about a humiliating sex tape up on the internet put by a brother, a very humiliating sex tape. And I didn't realize until my wife asked me right before production what the hell the movie was about. I told her I really didn't know. And then I started thinking about it, and I realized, oh, fuck, I hope I can say that. I'm writing a movie about Rotten Tomatoes. I'm writing a movie about bad reviews on the internet. And that's what Frankie Go Boom is about. It's about a humiliated person who's got a sex tape with no sex in it because he can't achieve erection on the internet. And he's humiliated, and he's hiding, and he decides to come out and play again. And honest to God, in the writing process, I had no idea I was writing my little story. I had no idea until my wife asked me.
Well, it's so funny that like Rotten Tomatoes is in some way, at least beneath the surface, it's not overtly about Rotten Tomatoes, but it's about reviews and reactions to things and how those perceptions can be flipped and put in a different context. I think that today critics are taken far more seriously than they should be. I really think that the marketplace, the audience reaction is probably the more honest reaction. I think that there are more than a few critics these days where I kind of feel like they're preloaded with some agenda that they have, whether they have biases against the filmmaker or biases against the subject matter. And so it's disconcerting to me to see. I grew up reading Pauline Kael, who I just revered and love, and also Siskel and Ebert, other people that I grew up reading and their reviews. And I feel like we're in this place where I think there are more people reviewing movies professionally than movies are made in a year. And so that's saying something, where there used to be this small pool of really knowledgeable in terms of knowing film history. And now we've got a lot of people writing about film that just don't have that film history knowledge. But that's why I really think that the most honest reaction is the audience. And you deal with that in the movie. I mean, they talk about like, what is that sort of, the positive reaction? It's like, look at the number of views. It's 1 million views, 2 million views, 5 million views. Look at the comments. And then people, Charlie Hunnam's character is like bombarded with, both positive and negative reaction. I really do love also the sort of flipping of like, he thinks something's awful. And, Bruce, the director, played by Chris O'Dowd, is like, no, this is a great thing. Yeah. So I love, it's so also over the top. And I'm curious, when this film got released, like, I feel like I should have known about this movie. Like,
well, that was your first question. So what I didn't tell you. So when we went to South by Southwest and people showed up, and Nora Ahmed was our rep, and we got quite a few offers from people, but again, they were they were modest in the way that they frequently can be. And Nora was brave enough to suggest that we break up the rights. I believe it was Nora. I hope I'm crediting him and not discrediting him wrongfully. But he said break up the rights. So what that means is you sell this Dominion to this company and that to that, and someone gets streaming and someone gets DVD. By doing that, we ended up becoming modestly profitable, or at least we made our money back almost. So something that is rare in the film business, certainly independently financed. So it was a good decision. But as a result of that, the PR thing was a lot more difficult. We didn't have the umbrella of a single release, so we didn't have that kind of apparatus in place. So that's one of the reasons why nobody heard about it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the only people I know heard about this movie were Sons of Anarchy fans. And if it weren't for Sons of Anarchy fans, we would have had almost no life, because they all wanted to see Ron Pearlman and Charlie Hunnam in very, very different roles. And they play them in this movie. And they even play them together. So
look, it's worth it just for those scenes between the two of them. Yeah. I mean, it is, oh my God. I don't want to ruin it, but you've got to see Frankie Go Boom, or 3-2-1 Frankie Go Boom. And it is on Netflix right now. That's right.
I believe, you know what? I honest to gosh, I think it is. I think the DVD is on Netflix. I do not think it's streaming anywhere, because the streaming is going to come back alive. I think as a result of what we're doing right now, we're re-releasing it. But I don't believe you can stream it anywhere. But I do believe the DVD, which Universal bought the DVD rights, and I believe you can still get the DVD at Redbox and any DVD outlet. And so I think you can on Netflix still get it.
Well, this is something of a cool factor, because it requires a little bit more effort than clicking a button to get to see this film.
Yeah, but not that long. It's about to start streaming any second now. I think that's
okay, good. Well, hopefully by the time that we're recording this, and I record a bunch of podcasts, and then I'll run them later, and I'm hoping that it'll be available.
It will be. It
will be. So the cast was clearly having a really good time during it. So I'm curious how much improvisation there was. I mean, you've really got some amazing comedic actors. The chemistry with Lizzy Caplan and Charlie Hunnum in their scenes, I thought was really funny, especially because it's not traditional. It's not a traditional love, romantic scenes, right?
No.
So tell me what it was like to work with this cast.
Well, listen, first, lucky as could be, again, self-financed, not a lot of money. And if there are any indie filmmakers out there trying to attract kind of A-level or higher level talent for your pictures, here's what I would suggest to you, which really worked gold for us. Two things: shoot in their hometown. Don't ask them to work for nothing in Phoenix or in Idaho or in Miami or Maui. Ask them to work for nothing at home. That was one. And give them a chance to do something they don't get paid for. And that's what we did. Everybody got to play somebody a little different than the character they were. Charlie is really not like Frankie in any movie he's ever made. And it's an aspect of the real Charlie. Charlie is a very charming, simple, easygoing gentleman, in my opinion, and that comes through in the part. And he was given a chance to do that. Chris O'Dowd, conversely, got to play a bit of a dick. Same with Chris Noth, who never gets to play the schmuck he plays in my movie. And of course, Ron plays a trans woman, which today Ron Pearlman would not play a trans woman, and I support that. I have a trans sister. I would not have cast a non-trans person in that role, but I did. I'm delighted in her performance. I think she's delicious in the movie, but everybody got to do something different. Lizzy as well. So that's how that cast happened. And yes, there was a fair amount of improvisation. Chris O'Dowd is a genius. And I wish I could say I wrote everything he said. I didn't. But I take credit for allowing him to change my lines. So it's a modest credit.
There definitely seemed to be a lot of yes and happening. Like as soon as the movie goes this far, you think, oh, they're not going to go, and then it happens.
Yeah,
and then it definitely goes there, so to speak.
Yeah,
Chris Noth, I think it may not be the first time his ass has been seen on screen. I think it's possible it's been seen in other places.
First time Ron Pearlman's ass has been seen on screen. That's
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That scene was That was amazing. Ron Pearlman really went for it. I always like when you see an actor and they just seem to like, okay, they're going for it. They're not holding anything back. And that was certainly true of Ron and definitely Lizzy in the, I've seen Lizzy Caplan in comedic roles. This is just like nothing you've ever seen her in. So hopefully people will finally get to see this film. I didn't realize that it played South by Southwest. So you were fortunate, because I've been interviewing a lot of filmmakers these days that have not been able to see their movies with an audience. You got to see it with an audience. Not just that, an audience in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest. And Austin audiences tend to be some of the best audiences to screen a film for. They're so passionate, enthusiastic, and they're so cinema savvy. People from Austin, just because they're so lucky to live in a town that has so many great venues to see films. And tell me about that crowd reaction.
Oh, it was first off, when you're writing a comedy, you're shooting a comedy, you're editing a comedy, you're hoping you hear the voices, the laughter in your ear, you hear it in your head. You don't know until opening night, and that first laugh is just always intoxicating in every film, but certainly that was delicious in Frankie Go Boom, which is a very funny movie. It's especially very funny in a crowd. It plays to single people, but it was a delight to be in that crowd. And you're right, they're unbelievably savvy, funny, just delightful audiences. They were wonderful. Every screening was wonderful. And like I said, we came out of the festival with multiple buyers. We just ended up cobbling together our own version of that. So.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, one of the best experiences for a filmmaker is to see your movie on a big screen with an audience that is enthusiastic and passionate. And the miserable parts about being a filmmaker are things related to finance and legal issues and all that stuff. So tell me what, having been through this experience as a director, previously, and here you're a first time, you're finance a film that you're directing. What are the takeaways and lessons that you would impart on, say your closest friend that's about to go direct their own film that they have self-financed? What would be the things that you would tell that really close friend that they absolutely must know now, having been through that experience? What would you tell that person to look for?
Plan for post, plan for post, plan for post, plan for post. Have money for post. I ended up spending a lot more money in post because I didn't plan for post. That's one. Sound matters. Do not skimp on sound in production. Pay attention to sound. Split rights. Don't accept a blanket deal from somebody who's cheating you and going to make a lot more money as they divvy up the rights. If you can find a decent enough, kind enough lawyer to work the incredible, laborious process of splitting those rights and sharing them, do it. You will make more money. If you can do it, you should do it. And don't shoot any scene you don't need. Now, of course, you're going to go through an editing process and you're going to find scenes you were sure you needed, but do the due diligence. If you're an independent finance film, you don't have much time. Any day you spend shooting a scene that's not going to be in a movie is a day you spent not having ample time to shoot another scene. So be diligent. Do not shoot a scene you don't need. Read the thing aloud, read it repeatedly, read it again out loud, listen, know the story before you try to tell the story, and then be prepared for surprises along the way. What else? I think that's it. Those are the big ones.
You really hit the nail on the head. I feel like a table read, when you read it out loud, you realize, oh, you don't need this scene. That information was here, or you can combine the information from this scene, just add a line to another scene. You don't need that whole scene, but you need that info. So the reading aloud, I think, is really important.
Right after I made the film, I went to work at Pixar, at Disney, with John Lasseter was starting to do movies at Disney, and I wrote a movie called Big Hero 6. And in that process, what you do is you do these readings that are with two-dimensional drawings, basically, but they're essentially actors reading the script. And you learn so much, and you don't start making the movie until you've done an iteration in 2 dimensions with little drawings and actors' voices that moves you, that carries you, and you know what the film is going to be, and then you make the film. And it was very tremendously helpful to have that reinforced right after doing that with Frankie. And the other thing I would say is, shit, it's gone out of my head. There was one other little.
But I want to ask you about, you brought up Big Hero 6. I love that film. such a beautiful film. It's one of those where it's like there are a couple moments in there where you get really choked up, like I think you've seen that movie with an audience, but Big Hero 6 is just so emotional. It's got all those emotional beats, and it's really enjoyed it. I have read so much about how Pixar, they're so diligent about story, and famously, Lasseter shut down production of the first Toy Story because it wasn't working. The story wasn't working. There's a whole like different version of that movie that was originally intended, and I feel that just shows that commitment to story that Pixar just, we're so used to Pixar hitting home runs out of the gate all the time. So it's amazing that you were able to have that working experience. And I thank you for that film, Big Hero 6. I mean, you see how popular that movie is, like years after it came out. I mean, if the merch is still around, right? I mean, Baymax is a thing. It's so delightful, and I think it's great that you're able to not only have a career in Hollywood with your bigger budget pictures, but also in independent film as well.
And Pixar has a great slogan on their wall. I think it's like 50 feet across in giant letters, and it's very instructive. And they say, "We don't finish films, we release them." And it really speaks to their process, and it's a very brave process. Any artist it's very brave to be willing to constantly be considering, and not from a perfectionistic, almost toxic and abusive way, but from an organic way, to be organically diligent. And they, as you say, they hit home run after home run. And once he came to Disney, the man is, shortcomings aside, the man is clearly a perhaps the most brilliant storyteller of our generation, in terms of overseeing the stories he's overseen that are rich and deep and nuanced and surprising and shift tone, as you said. He is comfortable with tone shifts. He encourages them. He did things in Big Hero that many people would never have allowed to happen, both in darkness and in levity, both in poignancy and in humor.
Yeah, I mean, there's some shocking moments. I think whenever there's a death in a film that's, I guess, primarily targeted toward children, although I would say Pixar movies tend to transcend that. It's more for families and enjoyable at all levels. That's always something that to prepare for. It certainly affected me quite a bit, and I love that film. I own that. I bought that film. I love that movie. It's awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. Frankie Go Boom. Congratulations. And I can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Hey, I made a movie released last year called Burn Your Maps, which I'm quite fond of. It's my favorite of my little darling films. And it's called Burn Your Maps, and it's pretty much available everywhere. It was released last June, so like 15 months ago, June, whatever that is. 18 months, 20?
Well, I haven't seen it, but now it has to go on my list.
Go. Okay. Plug.
Thank you again, Jordan. Take care.
Peace, Chris. Bye now.